My name is Jessica, and welcome to my studio. This video is going to launch a series that I am going to do, which are a version of sketchbook walkthroughs, which I love. I love to watch them, but when I do, I'm always wanting more, and not just buzzing through to music, and I'm trying to slow down the video and go back and actually see that page, and no story about why it happened and so on. So what I like to do in my walkthroughs, I call sketchbook stories. It's a walkthrough, it's a talk through, it's a how-to. And what I do is I tell you the story of my pages and my spreads. And in so doing, I show you my method of combining ideas of hunting for exciting stuff and then how I turn around and how I use it in my books. So this one is about a very recent trip to Arizona. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, so this is not a big trip, and it's a place that I go very often. I visit Tucson, Arizona very often. I have relatives and friends there, and I've been there so many times that it's a challenge each time to make a book about the trip that's different from all the other ones, but I'm up for it usually. I'm going to start by telling you the book I use this time. I am a big fan of the Stillman and Byrne beta sketchbooks in general, but I also am a lifetime watercolor painter, and I love the relationship with 100% cotton paper, all velvety, and how the paint flows and everything. And so I'm always on the lookout for that kind of a watercolor sketchbook, and I have found it. In fact, all of the books made by this company are affordable. They're on Amazon, and I think the paper is absolutely wonderful. The maker, the brand name is Tumuarta. It's Tumuarta, and I will put a link in the description so you can find them. Many of the books are hardcover, different shapes and different colors, and really fun. But this one is deckle-edged, which I just find wonderful. I don't know, there's something about that just reminds you of painting on Arches paper. And this is the closest I have found in an off-brand, if you will, paper to my beloved Arches cold press, or rough, because I love the texture. Anyway, so this is the book, and I think it was about $19, $18, something, so really a good price, and a nice size, and 140-pound paper, and a wonderful texture, which you can see. This cold press texture is in here. The other thing, you can see it with this granulating paint, and the other thing that I really love about this is that on each spread, the paper is the same texture. A lot of these papers have a rougher side and a less rough side. This isn't hot press or anything, but it's less rough than this. And so if they face each other, which they do in a lot of these brands of imported sketchbooks, you can't work across the gutter and have the same kind of look, because the paper texture won't be. In this one, they align that, so this is a not so rough spread, this is a rough spread, and both pages are the same each time. So the story, I start before I start my trip. I start my sketchbooks because I get all eager and excited, and I will say I never actually finish them on the trip either. So a travel sketchbook for me is something, it's a work in progress before the trip starts, and during the trip, and then after the trip ends. So this talk through sketchbook story is part one of this Arizona trip. And the reason that it has to be in parts is that I work really slowly, and I am not one of those people who beats myself up because it takes a long time. I work from a lot of photographs so that I can work at home at my own pace and lovingly. When I do this, you see a little shine here. I forgot the P in spring. Had to move the S and had to white out. I can't believe I did that, but we do this stuff. It's just so, concentrating on drawing. And speaking of drawing the letters, what I do here is exactly that. When I want to do headline lettering of a certain kind, I go into my computer, I get a font that I really like, I print out the entire font, and I carry it folded up with me in the back of a book. I'll show you what I mean here. Okay, so this is the printout, and this is an alphabet, a font called Bearer Font. I will put it in the description. BEARERFOND, something like that. I really love it. I've used it a lot in things that I've done on the Mac, but I've used it in a lot of sketchbooks too. And so what happens is, like, if you want to do Arizona in spring, you just get this out and you look at what the A looks like and you draw it. And to me, I'm not a calligrapher. I was a graphic designer for a long time, and I got all into fonts, and I never did hand lettering. I love it, but I can't think it, if you know what I mean. I'm always drawing the letter, and so this method works really great with me. I'm looking at those lines in that shape, and then I just draw it that way. I also always use guidelines, and I have an incredible best friend ruler that also goes with me everywhere. And I love it because being a creative mind person or right brand person, I'm not great with numbers. And so fiddling with a little ruler with eighths and stuff that I'm counting eighths, I don't like it. But with this, if I have to do the proportion of something, I can count squares, big and little squares. And I'll demonstrate how I do that at some point. But I also use this for guidelines, and it's really great because if you align, and these are like, I don't know, $2 or something on Amazon. If you align one of these with the edge of your page, then you know that you've got a horizontal guideline there. I usually make one at the bottom, really light pencil, and I make one at the top. And speaking of really light pencil, if you don't know my classes and how I go about things yet, I use, this happens to be a 4H, and I sometimes use 3H. And what that means is that this lead is very hard, and what that means is that it makes a very clean, light line. You never want to really push hard because that'll make a nice little engraving. But when you're sketching, if you use these pencils really lightly, they're going to erase completely away after you add your ink. And it's really important for things like this because it's not all that easy to center a headline. I'll talk about that at some point too. But you want to erase and redo however you want to. I had this like stacked under here. I did a bunch of stuff. That's why I say my pencil and my eraser are the most crucial creative tools that I have, because that is how I create. It's not a crutch. It's not a you diddle until the cows come home. It's none of that stuff that people online just really malign. My favorite tool. It is creativity on a stick. That's what it is. So you compose a page, and you'll see that as you get to know me better, how I go about these things. But this is the most important thing. I make guidelines for my headlines and lettering with that. So I'm going to pull up another amazing thing while we're talking about it. This is a little teeny piece of what it was. It was like this. And it is a black vinyl eraser. And I use white vinyl erasers too, but this one I travel with, because when you erase your pencil lines and you use a little pressure, instead of a bunch of eraser crumbs, you get like this long string of black eraser that's left over, and you just pick it up. And if you're at somebody's house, you just pile it up till you can throw it away. But there's not this, leaving eraser crumbs all over motel rooms and people's Airbnbs and so on like that. So this is really wonderful. And I'll also link the name of that. It's a Tombow Mono, I think. But I would have to dig it out to show you the label. Anyway, these are magic tools to me. These three especially, you will never catch me without these. So anyway, before I left, I wanted to do something. So I did a title page just with a typical scene from Tucson area, where the wonderful saguaro cactuses grow. In fact, the only place they grow is in the Sonoran Desert in the world, actually. They are, by the time they've got some arms like this, they're 200 years old. Amazing, amazing things. The national park there, driving through it is just like being on another planet, because there are so many of these. They're 50 years old before they get their first little beginning of an arm. So it's an incredible piece of nature to spend time with. And so I decided to, and it's so iconic, a symbol of Arizona. I decided to do a typical Arizona landscape with watercolor and some saguaros and some little yuccas, and add the title page for my book. Okay, the other thing that I often do before I ever leave is I do routing, I call it. I use driving directions for Apple Maps and so on. And I get routes and I make maps. And then I just do whatever I feel like doing at the time. But this time, I didn't know what I felt like doing. And so I was intended an itinerary. I was thinking, first of all, of taking the time to come down the freeway, I-25, from Santa Fe, and come down, cut over at Hatch, the place that's famous for chilies, and then take the side trip up to Silver City. Silver City is a wonderful little art town that's a side trip of about 60 miles up one side or so, maybe 40 and 40. But anyway, you have to leave I-10 here, and you go up here, and you come back down when you're closer to Arizona, right here. So that was the plan. I had even thought about stopping overnight in Truth or Consequences, because I like to cut this drive in half, just because it is, I don't know, it's less tiring. Your legs don't go to sleep as much. It's an 8-hour trip from Santa Fe to Tucson, and breaking it in half is wonderful. And I generally do that by going to Las Cruces first. And so that's why this looks like crazy. But this didn't even happen. So what I ended up doing, because of wind conditions, this period, or this part of the freeway here can have dust storms that are absolutely treacherous, because you can't see anything about where you're going. And so I don't want that, and I always watch for that, especially in the spring, when winds in the Southwest are big time in the spring. So what ended up happening for my first evening, I just went down I-25 all the way to Las Cruces, and I have a wonderful area there I stay, which you'll see about. And this was the trip to Tucson with my little red arrows. So I went this way and over this way to Tucson. Okay, the other arrows are my trip back, which I did a different thing and went to Las Cruces also, but then cut up what I call the back way, but it's a really kind of wonderfully interesting trip up the more eastern side of New Mexico. I did not paint this, I admit. I have stickers, I collect stickers, and sometimes when I don't have the time but I want a little graphic, I will use the stickers. Okay, so I mapped the whole thing, then I changed it to plan to and make notes, and this note right here is just about exits I didn't know around Las Cruces that work better for me. And so if I have it in this trip book, I will find that again and remember it. So all of this is done before I leave home. Not the arrows, because the choices weren't made until I went on the trip. But I put in the highways. I usually use blue for interstates and red for that kind of secondary road that's divided. And then two-laners are usually in green. That's just what I do. Doesn't really matter. And here's the state line right here. So that's how and why this was done. To be perfectly honest, when you have made the same trip a whole bunch of times, there's a lot of it that isn't exciting as far as the drive. And I left on a Sunday, so very little traffic, and that was great. I did run into a bunch of construction in Albuquerque, which is not usual. But I saw for my first time ever, and I can't believe all the road trips and everything, I've never seen this sign before and did not know what a zipper merge was. And that's, I guess, a term that refers to, when you got to go into one lane and the people keep cheating and coming up all the way and then trying to sneak in. That's what those are. And I didn't know it, but I looked it up and found out. Meanwhile, it was the only interesting thing I saw on that first drive that I haven't seen a million times before. There's a wonderful Comfort Inn that I stay in Las Cruces. It's in the old Mesilla area, which is the old town of Las Cruces, so it's cool. And what this was, I always look for still life in hotels and Airbnbs and, well, everywhere, restaurants, everywhere I am, it's a thing. It's a thing I like in my travel sketchbooks and my real sketchbooks. I love still life. So on the counter, and I will show you a picture to compare, on the counter of this Comfort Inn were these pots. Okay, here comes the photo. It's on my iPad. I take photos with my phone, but I end up putting them in albums on the iPad, so I can draw from that really well. A lot better than from a printout that's just one size. So there is what was sitting on the counter, and I took a picture of it, and here is my rendition. And they were really cool pots. From an artistic standpoint, it was interesting to mix reds and greens and not make mud. So it was one of the things that I love about this paper. It just works perfectly. It flows enough, and yet somehow it doesn't flow too much so that you get a mess. Because ordinarily, red and green are complements, and you would get gray, some kind of gray from them if you mixed them together on the page. And I do mostly mix on the page. I have mixing palettes with me all the time. This is one of my own that I make with glass, and so I will mix washes on the side to get a more watery consistency. However, I don't mix color. I don't have one of those things you see a lot of people have, is a big open palette with puddles of this and that and gray and all that. I'm a color purist, and I'll talk about that someday. For that reason, I do all my color mixing on the page. Anyway, across the street from this Comfort Inn is just one of the best pizza places I've ever found. And it's called Luna Rosa Winery and Pizzeria. They make their own wine, and they make just an amazing thin crust. It doesn't look thin here, but that's because it's puffed. Thin crust pizza. And the weather was very nice, even though it was only March. And they have this beautiful patio. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to explain how I create a page about a place using, observation and using photos that I took and where to put them and why and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm going to show you the photos that I took for this place. Okay, we're going to go through them a little bit here. Shots from out on the patio. I didn't want to get the tables and things in there. Another one was beautiful, beautiful color combinations with the blue and green and the adobe. I just really am crazy about that. We have a lot of that in Santa Fe, but all of New Mexico does too. This was a shot of this really amazing pizza, a glass of their wonderful Chardonnay, and this was my table out on the patio. It was a Sunday afternoon and it was early, and so there weren't any people to speak of. There were a few, but it was nice and quiet and wonderful. Okay, this was an arch that was right near where I was sitting, and it had a gate on it like this. And I'm showing you all these because then I'm going to tell you how I made these choices. Okay, and that was basically it for the pictures I took from where I was sitting. And so I looked at the spread and I thought, what do I want to do and where do I want to do it? I wanted the ambiance of sitting on that patio to feel, in the future when I see this page, I feel the breeze and the whole, feel the warmth of being there. Okay, and so I used a photograph, and I will do that whenever I think I can't do a better job sketching. I spent a big part of my life as a photographer when I had a graphic design business, and so I love photography, and I try to take good photos. So using them in my sketchbook is something I decided was okay a long time ago, and I always try to make it combine with sketches in a nice way. And so over here, then, what are you going to do? Well, I started what I was going to do with this photo. And I thought, I love the shape and the sky and the thing, and I thought, this is going to frame my page. I'm going to like that. And so that's what I did. This is all watercolor. And it was the first thing I did on the page. First, I sketched it with my pencil because I wanted it where I wanted it. And pretty much got exactly where I wanted it. But I moved a few lines a few times because I could erase and do it over again. Okay, and after that, I thought, do I want to sketch this? And I thought, no, you're not gonna make that any more delicious than it looks. And so this also is a photograph that I printed and I cut to fit right here within the arch. And what was on the pizza is here. I went online then to get a picture of the wine bottle from their website because I wanted a picture of the Chardonnay. And so I printed it, cut it out, put a line around it. And then I put the name up here, and I had this space. And on their website, they had a picture that I don't have to show you here, but it was a picture of a bunch of wine corks. And this one was sitting on the top, and it said, "Life is too short to drink bad wine." And I added, "or eat bad pizza." So I'm sorry about the gravelly voice, but this is allergy season, and I'm glad that's all I got is a gravelly voice and a little coughing. A lot of people are so miserable during this time. All right, so that is how I took the photos. and other stuff and made this spread. Now I want to note that I used this ruler to make that spacing as nice as it is. So I wrote sausage as centered as I could, and I counted the number of letters, which is 7. And I made a height decision, which is what I love about YouTube, is you can just talk about anything until the cows come home, and you're always free to leave if you want to. But I love stories. Anyway, 2 little boxes is my height. And then I decided on 1 box to be the spacing. And so that I went through and I made little hatch marks so that I had a set of the right height of guidelines for each of my words. And then, as it turns out, mushrooms and pepperoni have the same number of letters. And so I lined them up, and they have 9 letters, and sausage has 7. So we have 1 on each end, and it just worked out so perfect. You can tell I'm a perfectionist. I don't apologize for it one bit. I've been a perfectionist always. And what it's gotten me, instead of like all kinds of angst and whatever else is attributed to it, it's gotten me paintings, photography, sketchbooks that I love. I find no fault with them because I took care of that when I made them. Now, that's a different philosophy. Everybody's out there, permission to make a mess and everything. That's all good. If that's what's good for you, that's good. For me, I know there's no such thing as perfect, but I've always chased it. And in the chasing of it, I get better and better at what I do. And so what's wrong with that, right? Okay, and I did pencil all my letters and took a good look, having forgotten part of the word spring in the front, took a good look that I had it spelled correctly before I went in with my ink. Oh, yeah. I love Pitt pens for drawing and lettering. They're fine liners. Everybody knows about them, I think. Faber-Castell. I love them. Lots of different line widths, and they're so waterproof, and they dry instantly, and you never have to worry about smearing them with your watercolor. But recently, they came up with this. They always had the fine tips, and they had brush pens. But this is kind of a new thing. It's a 0.8 tip on this end, and that is a little bigger than their medium fine liner, which is 0.7, I believe. And so it's a bigger line for headlines. It's the same wonderful Pitt ink, and it's waterproof, and it's everything, but it makes really nice headlines or subheadlines, and it comes in a bunch of colors. And so I found these at a wonderful store called Texas Art, and they're in Houston, but they're also online. So you can't find these anywhere. Try there, because they are really cool. The other end is a fat brush. That's a lot fatter brush than their smaller brush pens, and it has a little bit of give because it's a brush. It doesn't have as much as some of the other brush pens where you can go, with a very fine line and then fat now, but it has some. So there's leafability, this is what I call it, when you can use a brush stroke to make a leaf. It takes flex in the brush tip, and this has enough. It has as much as I want. It will also fill in an area really quickly and smoothly. Okay. It's a pigment ink, in case anybody needs to know. It's not a dye ink. It's not an alcohol ink. It's pigment-based ink. So really nice. Okay, so I got up in the morning to go the rest of the way to Tucson, and I waited. I was not in any hurry on this trip. It was a 4-hour drive only. So I waited until 11 o'clock when my other favorite restaurant, which is about a half a mile away from this hotel, opened for lunch, and I went there for lunch. And this is called D.H. Lacombe. It's another owned by a winery restaurant. And their food is just incredible. Their wine is incredible too. And so I had their pot stickers for lunch and a little side of sauteed green beans there. That was the food part. And what I want to show you, because it's really interesting, is how I chose what I was going to do here. So I'm getting the iPad again. I have all my trip photos in an album in here, and that's why I can find them. Okay, so I took some shots of the restaurant, nothing much there, but this was on the table. And I told you I love chasing down a nice still life. And this was kind of a two-parter, you know, and I thought, boy, that is kind of complicated to sketch because you have the wine glass in front of the vase, and I didn't really want the wine glass in the sketch because it's there and it actually has some Chardonnay in it. Yes, I had a glass of their Chardonnay at noon because it's wonderful. And you don't want to go there and not have some, and it's a short pour, so it didn't affect driving or anything like that at all. I'm back. Okay, so I thought, I want to do this, but I think I'm going to take it apart. If this doesn't hold on, I'm going to get frustrated here because I want to show you. Okay, so I took the copper candle thing, salt and peppers, and this was a wine list, I think. I didn't really open it, but it had this wonderful cork cover. So I thought, I'm going to take out the wine glass. I'm going to use this as my still life, which is what I did here. Challenging to do salt and pepper shakers and get the direct match of how the cap looks, but you know, that's okay. Imperfection is also okay with me, within boundaries, right? And so I did try to get the height right and all that and the proportion right, but the tops, I did a few things and I gave up. Okay, and so then for this beautiful flower thing here, I hope I have that under the camera. I do. Okay, I took it away from that still life and I created it on its own here. And it's a nice balance to the food picture. And this, by the way, is their sign, if you will. This is out at the street and wine barrels and so on. Okay, and then one of the exits to they have an outdoor seating area. And this is one of the exits, and I was taken with the gate. Let me find it. Oh, they grow some of the wine right there, and I don't know why it's flooded. It wasn't raining, so this has to be about growing it. My brother's a vintner, and so I asked him, and he said they must be irrigating because it's so dry in it, and it hasn't rained, but he wasn't sure really either. And so this was in the parking lot. I really liked the photograph because of the blue stripes echoing the sky, but I thought that's too much to reproduce on the page. And so I just did this here, or my rendition of it. I'm going to make another video about drawing gates and doors and windows and having it turn out like you want it to turn out. That's too much for this particular video. And so that was lunch. Okay, and so the rest of this part 1 video is just the rest of the drive to Tucson. And this is here and it has its entertaining parts too. These are all 3 photographs. And so this is just weird. That's all I can say about it. You leave Las Cruces on Highway 10. Okay, right here, and about 30 miles out, so about halfway between Las Cruces and Deming, New Mexico, is this thing, and it's called Aquila Flats, and it is just sitting there in the middle of nowhere. It's a trading post, but the trading post is this little bit of a building way down here, and the rest of it looks like an old West town. And they did this obviously to attract traffic. I've got to do more research to see when it was built, but super faded. So it was built a long time ago, and these are all just facades. They got nothing behind them except, those boards that make something stand up. But it's fun. They're cute. The church, this, that. I didn't take a lot of pictures of them. I have driven by this so many times and gone, what in the heck is that? And so this time I stopped and I looked it up, and I found out that it's one of a chain of, I can't think of the name right now, Bolin or something, chain of trading posts that they have along the highways. And so at the end was this brown barn. It was located right here. And in earlier photos of this that I found online, this was just as faded out and, old as the rest of these. But someone is busy redoing it. And I thought this was adorable. These little horses are right. That's that window right there. And so I hope they redo the whole thing, because if it were bright and colorful again, although, you get people off the highway, and I think they had a gas pump, and then the usual trading post kind of, I don't know, jewelry and little weird things. I don't know if you want to go to that much effort to pull people off for just that. There's no town. I guess Aquila Flats is a Native American land. Apache, I think, maybe. Yeah, I think Apache lands, but they pulled that name out for this little doodad right here. Anyway, okay, the whole rest of the drive to Tucson, you see millions of these, although I did read that their population is declining. I have no idea why. This is a soap tree. It's a yucca. Here's the real name. And what fascinates me about this is it's kind of how the buffalo was for the plains tribes. This was for the desert tribes. It's a thing that it's the general store of life for these peoples. And because they're very, very clever, they used so much of everything. And you can look it up online about the whole list. But they were able to make food and clothing and luggage and soap from the sap. And there were edible parts of the plant as well. And, the fibers, they wove all this into baskets to carry things in. And it goes on and on. It's like a no-waste plant that provided everything that was needed. They're only found in West Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, in the Sonoran Desert, and in northern Mexico, which is also part of the Sonoran Desert. Interestingly, our state of New Mexico, our state flower, is the bloom of this tree. And this is also interesting because of how this whole thing was painted with just strokes of I don't know if I use these or if I use a water-based one, but a flexible tip marker was how I did this whole sketch. And I'm going to make a video on that because of how easy and fun it is to make this tree. And if you're driving on I-10 through the Southwest, you see a million of them. You can't get a good picture from going by. It's all blurry. I wonder if I have my blurry picture here to show you. Sometimes I try to put the phone on the dashboard and see if I can, just press buttons, and it doesn't work out. This was the best I did. But this is a real one, and very blurry, but you can see the substance of it. You can see that it had two trunks, and it was a lot taller flowers than this. But anyway, yeah, that's the soap tree yucca, and you can find it all over. So this is the end of part 1 of the Arizona road trip sketchbook story, and I hope I haven't bored you. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to continue to do these because I'm having fun with it, and I know some friends of mine love when I do these explanations. I know it's a good learning thing. If I can watch people make decisions about what they put in their sketchbook, I'm like, yippee, I'm learning how somebody else's brain works, and it helps me to make my brain work in this way and another way. Anyway, I'll be back when I finish the next part. That's why you're not seeing it now, because as I said, I am slow. If this video has brought up any questions for you, go ahead and ask them in the comments. I read all comments and answer all comments. Maybe you have other travel tips around this area. Maybe you know more about a soap tree yucca. I don't know. But I think that community is so much more important on YouTube than likes or subscriptions, or they all help. But I think talking to each other is the best fun of it. So I'm going to get back to work on this sketchbook, and I'll be back with the next part of it as soon as I get it done.